we to understand the gospel story of the poor widow giving all of her money to the temple, Jesus comments about her donation, saying that this poor widow has put in more than all the others. She gave the most. But in context, was that a good thing to do? And did Jesus think that this was a good thing to do? Spurious familiarity and immaculate perception disease befuddle 21st century Western Christians whenever they read this gospel passage. We tend to forget that the New Testament originated long ago in a culture most alien to ours in the West. Please take a moment to pause the video and carefully read the gospel passage of Mark chapter 12 verse 38 to chapter 13 verse 2, recalling that chapter breaks were added to the gospels centuries after they were written. And then restart the video and let's discuss the following subjects from this section. Who were the scribes in Jesus' society? Who were widows in the social world of the Gospels? And is Jesus praising the widow's action? You all remember that story where Jesus sits down in the temple opposite the treasury and he people watches? He watches how a crowd of Israelites put money into the treasury. Many greedy people putting in large sums. Then along comes this poor widow. All she has are these two little tiny coins worth almost nothing. And she gives up everything she has. And Jesus, he calls his disciples over and he says to them, "Amen, I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all other contributors to the treasury. For they have all contributed from their surplus wealth, but she from her poverty has contributed all she had, her whole livelihood." Question: was Jesus praising this widow? Folks, don't read this story like an American would. Reading the Bible is cross-cultural communication. So don't be an ugly American tourist disrespectfully reading our Middle Eastern Bible. You cannot get what the Bible means until you realize what the Bible meant. And to do that, you have to take off your Western glasses. Jesus was a peasant serving other peasants. So it's important to read this story from the peasant perspective. Folks, peasants scratch out survival. They see all the goods of the universe as being limited, material goods and spiritual goods. So read this story from their perspective of the limited good. Not like Americans who think that the universe will always give you more, there's always more to come. Since according to the peasant view, all goods, material and spiritual, are finite in quantity and already distributed, it is impossible to obtain more goods honestly. At the same time, people have to safeguard what they have, because if you lose it and you cannot find it, well, there is no more where this came from. The word for widow in Hebrew carries the meaning of one who is silent, unable to speak. In the fiercely gender-divided Mediterranean world, men interact in the public sphere, but women stay secluded along with the children deep within the home, where they manage household affairs. Men play the public role, they speak in public. Women do not speak on their own behalf. By definition, a biblical widow, a Mediterranean, an ancient Israelite widow, has already lost one significant male in her life, her husband. Every Mediterranean woman is always under the care of one of four men: her father, her brother, her husband, and her son. If the widow's father is dead, that leaves only the possibility of a son. If the widow in this story still has an unmarried eldest son, who is going to publicly arrange the marriage? If she has no son at all, she might have to return to her family of origin, if that's still an option. Among the early followers of Jesus, widows were a major concern. Younger ones were urged to remarry, their marriages being arranged by the Jesus groups, which were like fictive families. Because widows were not included in Israelite inheritance laws, they were deeply concerned with how to live day by day. Whatever resources this widow might have had would have been very meager. Her cultural obligation, just like everyone else's in this society, was to maintain her honor status, little though it was, and not do anything to jeopardize it or lessen it. Well, as a widow, she has already lost a notch in honor status. If Jesus' observation is accurate, that this widow has given to the temple her whole livelihood, then she has acted very foolishly and shamefully. She has deliberately worsened her honor status. Earlier, Jesus condemned the making of donations to the temple and thereby depriving one's parents of support. It would be doubly wrong for an adult, a widow with no other apparent source of support, to give away the little she has and plunge herself irretrievably into deeper poverty. No, Jesus does not praise this woman. Rather, he laments her stupid behavior. He directs his scathing scorn toward the scribes, those experts in the law of Moses who taught and encouraged this kind of stupid, shameful behavior to such as this widow. Jesus criticizes the scribes for their ostentatious and very expensive robes. They're grasping for honor, being greeted in the marketplace, and their active participation in places of honor at banquets. Think about it. For an ancient Mediterranean person to attend a banquet meant that he would have to invite the host to a banquet in return. All these criticisms of Jesus involve access to wealth. Where did the scribes get such wealth, such resources? The temple tribute that was collected from all the Israelites. That was collected with the intention to be redistributed by temple personnel to the poor and needy. The problem? It wasn't. Instead, it was hoarded and used for behaviors of conspicuous consumption, as we just said. Moreover, the wealth was unjustly acquired by deceiving people, such as this poor widow. That phrase, poor widow, is almost tautological. Poor in the Bible isn't an economic term. It is a social term. Being biblically poor describes someone who has temporarily lost their honor status. A widow, in the Bible, has lost her honor status as a married person embedded in a husband and his family. With devoted obedience, she has listened to the misleading teachings of the scribes who, Jesus says, devour the houses of widows. Indeed, no sooner has Jesus completed his criticism of the scribes when this widow comes along to fulfill her temple duty and makes Jesus' point. Now, hearing me say this in this presentation may be hard. After all, so many churches misuse this darling gospel passage for their fundraising campaigns and drives. So you may find my interpretation here difficult to accept. If so, do you prefer to say that Jesus is praising this widow for her sacrificial spirit of giving? Well, what then do you make of the story that follows? Because if Jesus is praising this stupid widow, then Jesus must be pretty heartless and cruel in Mark chapter 13, verses 1 to 2. Why? Because in those very next verses, Jesus says that this beautiful Jerusalem temple that this woman has given everything to, all of it, will soon be utterly destroyed. Says Jesus, there will not be left a stone upon another stone that will not be thrown down. Would Jesus in one breath praise the widow for despoiling herself to contribute to the temple, yet in the very next breath say that this temple will soon be destroyed? That's not very likely, folks. What is indeed much more likely is that Jesus is lamenting the behaviors of this foolish widow, based as they were on the deceptive teaching of the scribes.